responsible than others, they will be held accountable. But again, truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror. I know why you did it. I know you were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There were a myriad of problems which conspired to... Fear got the best of you, and in your panic you turned to the now High Chancellor. He promised you order, he promised you peace, and all he demanded in return was your silent, obedient consent. Last night, I sought to end that silence. Last night, I destroyed the Old Bailey to remind this country of what it has forgotten.
More than 400 years ago, a great citizen wished to embed the 5th of November forever in our memory.
His hope was to remind the world that fairness, justice, and freedom are more than words. They are perspectives. So if you've seen nothing,
if the crimes of this government remain unknown to you, then I would suggest that you allow the 5th of November to pass unmarked.
But if you see what I see, if you feel as I feel, and if you would seek as I seek, then I ask you to stand beside me 1 year from tonight, outside the gates of Parliament, and together we shall give them a 5th of November that shall never, ever be forgotten.
Every Sunday on Don's Diorama, journey into the unknown, venture into the bowels of the rabbit hole with some verbal diarrhea at 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. BST on Don's Diorama.
And makes a statement regarding chemtrail death dumps being sprayed from planes onto populations around the world. The death dumps, otherwise known as chemical trails, are being dropped and sprayed throughout the United States and all over the world, in particular England, Scotland, Ireland and Northern Europe. I've personally seen them not only in the United States but in Mexico and in Canada. Birds are dying around the world. Fish are dying by the hundreds of thousands around the world. This is genocide. This is poison. This is murder by the United Nations. This element within our society that is doing this must be stopped. I happen to know of 2 of the locations where the airplanes are that dump this crap on us. 4 of the planes are out of the Air National Guard in Lincoln, Nebraska. And the other planes are out of Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I personally have observed the planes that were standing still in Nebraska, Lincoln. Nebraska at the Air National Guard. They have no markings on them. They are huge, bomber-like airplanes with no markings. This is a crime. A crime against humanity. A crime against America and the world, of course. A crime against the citizens of this great world. This must be stopped. What is wrong with the world? I'm ad-libbing there. This has an effect on their population and their people and their friends. Because I say that because this is about the world. It's not just about. I am reading his statement, and it's affecting the whole world. It's not just America. So I want to make it relevant to everyone that's listening, obviously, because it does affect us all. So it's a crime against humanity. So what's wrong with the world? This is an effect on the population, the people, their friends, their relatives and themselves. What's wrong with them? What's wrong with the pilots who are flying these airplanes and dumping this crap, this poison on their own families? Somebody has to do something about it. Somebody in Congress has to, or whatever, has to step forward and stop it now. Thank you. And that's by Ted Gunderson. So, as I said, welcome to Don's Diorama. It's Sunday, 23rd of June 2013, and tonight on the show, I've been joined by two wonderful researchers, activists who do a great deal of activism for the cause of against chemtrail. I'll start again. They expose chemtrails. And they recently held a conference, which we'll talk about later. Their names are Max Bliss, who I've had on the show before, you may remember, and Mona Norman, who's new to my show. Mona Norman had done a geoengineering conference in London just recently, and both of them will be talking a bit about that during the course of the show. We might last longer than an hour. We'll see how it goes. So basically, let's get to the crux of the matter. We're going to cover a bit about chemtrails, a bit about HAARP, global warming connection, obviously talk about geoengineering. It all connects, and then we'll see from there what happens. So first of all, Max and Mona, how are you guys doing?
Hi, I'm fine. I don't know where Mona is. Are you there, Mona?
I'm here. I'm good too.
Excellent. Welcome on the show, both of you. Now, let's start, as I always do, at the very beginning, and let's get a wee introduction from both of you. Maybe Max, you can go first, and then Mona. And maybe tell us about how you began, how you got involved in the whole activism with exposing these chemtrails and the work you're doing, and obviously to expose it to the wider public and to bring it to attention of the people running the governments and whatnot. So yeah, if you can just go into that, start from the beginning and lead up to present day, basically, that would be great.
Okay then. Well, basically, my name's Max Bliss, and I'm a regular, ordinary person. I work as a builder. I've worked outside for 25 years, and looking up at the sky has been a regular occupation for me, knowing what the weather is going to do, because I work outside and I'm weather dependent. Last year, I live in the south of France, by the way, southwest of France, and we live in a region with very high sunshine hours and very nice weather, lucky. And last year we had no sunshine, and very, very little sunshine compared to normal, and I saw lots and lots of persistent jet trails, which I researched and found out were chemtrails. And basically I started to look into this, and I started to video them. And the more and more I found out that this was part of a big program, the more and more I became convinced that I have to do what I can to share as much information as possible to help raise awareness. So I started on my journey of making videos and getting information and sharing information and having information shared with me, and developing my activism. And basically I think I did hit a bit of a turning point when I painted up my van, and that got a lot of attention because people were then able to ask me questions what I was doing. And I came I came across Mona, or Mona came across me actually and contacted me. So that's the point where I'll pass it over to Mona.
Thank you. Mona?
Hello. Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Right, now I guess I introduced me. My name is Mona Norman. I'm a single parent who lives in West London, and goodness me, I started having awakenings, which took me to the chemtrail, sort of being alerted to chemtrails. I met Olga Raffa from Chemtrail Project UK at a friend's music festival. And for me, I was going through a process of, hey, You know, we are spiritual beings having human experiences. This is a time for us to let go of all of our social programming. And many years ago, people would ask that question, why are we here? Why are we here? What is the purpose of our existence? And now it's more about, well, we need a bigger house, we need a bigger car, we need to pay the mortgage, we need to get our tape measures out and see how big we are next to that person so that we know how we behave, where we fit in, and all of this nonsense. So at this festival, we were all sharing love and light, and it was wonderful. And my friend Olga Rafa pointed out, well, you know what, we've got a lot of work to do while we're in this dimension. While we're alive, we've got a lot of work, a lot of things that we have to face. And I think that was my first introduction to chemtrails. Now, I've already, at this point, I've already seen a lot of information on the internet and awakenings. And for me, it's very much, you know, the blue pill, the red pill. Once you become awake and things start to grate against you and feel uncomfortable, then you know, as a consciously awake person, you just look, you do all of your own research, and it's kind of like feeding your soul. And that was a process that a road I went down from that point. I was a photographer, and my passion was photographing the sunsets and the sunrises and the planets and the stars. And that's how I guess what I really lived for, my photography. And it was a point where I couldn't get a shot of a full moon. I was photographing the full moon every month. And all of a sudden, I couldn't get a picture of a full moon. I couldn't take a clear picture of the sunset. The skies were just so filthy. And living in West London, people would say, hey, you know, you're crazy. We've got so many airports. You're just talking nonsense. You know, and, you know, air flight has increased. Pollution levels have increased. But through the internet and Facebook, I connected with people all over the planet, not just in London, who are experiencing the same things with me, seeing these persistent trails that feathered out and connected until the whole sky was whited out, not just in near London, but across the planet. And yeah, I got to a point last year where the whole of London was just a grid. It was like something out of a science fiction film. It was so frightening. And I was aware of what was happening and pointing it out to everyone around me. Look at the sky, it's just a grid of chemtrails. And I got so upset that I made a promise to myself that I was going to do everything I could from that day to raise awareness. And that's what I've done. I decided to connect with as many people who are going to take action as possible. There's a lot of people on the internet that share information. There's a lot of people that meet up in person as well. And I'm really blessed. I ask for help. I become humble and I say, hey, I'm just one. I can't do this, we do it. We all do this together. This raising awareness thing is joint consciousness, a joint energy that we all do. And that is our gift. You know, when we're separated and we act out of fear, we think we can't. But when we all connect and we act out of love, we can, we're unstoppable. And that's what pulled me towards Max Bliss. I saw his work on the internet and I was blown away by this guy's energy and his passion. And I could almost feel his passion. And that's something I'm very much connected to as another passionate person. And so I got in touch with Max and I said, hey, I want to put on a conference in London, a chemtrail awareness conference. And through Max Bliss and another guy, Ben Dodds, who's part of Chemtrail Awareness, Alan Potter, Alex Longman, who's done a lot of work with Olga Raffel with Chemtrails Project UK. So we had a selection of presenters and we put on this conference and we brought lots of people together, and which was the start, I think, for me to realise we can do this, we can make a difference. And since then, we have had gatherings, we've had a protest in London, we've started a tour which has been in Max's Chuggaboom van, which I think he pointed out. He explains a little bit about his van, and driving in his van gets so much attention, which is fantastic. We want people to actually look and to wake up and to see that we're not afraid to raise awareness. So many people are afraid to have these conversations. And we put a tour on, in April, we put 6 conferences on around the south of the country, which was an amazing experiencing, just just seeing how many people are awake and aware, and the amount of knowledge and information. But from experiences, there are people that are awake, but they choose to sort of sedate themselves a little bit and go, it's keeping people awake. Stay awake, stay awake, stay with it. And where I live in London, there's a lot of people that surround me that are very awake and aware of everything, but still on that, well, what can we do about it? And for me personally, it is, hey, while we're alive and we're awake and we're in this dimension, we do everything we can to make whatever difference we can. And that's what this is all about. For me, for Max, and all the people that I've known, we just do whatever, little or large, we can to raise awareness.
Oh, you're doing a fantastic job. I mean, I've seen a lot of the kind of work and heard about the work that you're doing, and if it'd been nearer for me, I would definitely have attended that conference, but I did throw it around a lot for people and try and invited a lot of people, so I don't know. I think what we'll do is, I've got a few questions to ask you just now, the both of you, and you can just take turns, obviously. We could work it like that. You can just take turns with the questions, whatever ones you feel comfortable answering. And so we'll do that, and then we'll move towards that throughout the course of the interview, okay?
Okay.
So if we start with, probably makes sense to define the terms geoengineering and chemtrails for those who aren't so aware of any of this information that might be listening. We'll just assume none of us know anything, well, obviously apart from yourselves. I'll assume that in regards to the subject, and so you can define these things for us, please. Max, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I'll have a... I can't actually give you the exact definition without having to find my notes, but I can tell you what geoengineering is. Geoengineering is the scientific response to force the climate to change in order to combat global warming. So what the established scientific community are saying is that there is a threat to the way we live on this planet through global warming affecting our environment. So their response, the scientific community's response, has been to develop geoengineering. Now, the concept with geoengineering is they are going to forcibly change the climate on our planet to combat the negative effects of this so-called global warming. I think it's been quite fairly well established now that global warming is a fraud, and it's been exaggerated, and it's been a useful mechanism to be able to get geoengineering into the public domain. And basically, I view geoengineering as a cover story for publicly being able to engage in weather modification and weather manipulation for other agendas. I think it's a smokescreen. I don't think that's actually speculation. I think that it's a genuine topic that's being studied by universities like Oxford University and Stanford University and many other universities around the world, actually. Yeah. But it's when you start to dig deeper, you'll find that the agenda for weather control was publicly declared at the United Nations Assembly in 1961. By JFK, and when you start to research into all of this, you realise that weather control has been at the top of the agenda just as much as the nuclear war, Cold War thing that was going on, except the nuclear war was out in the public domain to frighten everyone to death, to justify all the expenditure and all the secrecy and all the cloak and dagger stuff of the Cold War. Whereas weather control was always kept quiet and in the back.
Hello? Sorry.
So no, that's okay. So I can leave it there and pass it over if you like.
No. Sorry, the sound cut out there. I was sure if it was myself losing my connection or not, but you're back, so it's fine.
Okay, yeah. So basically, geoengineering is the official government or the United Nations or the CFR or whoever, the World Bank are connected to global warming. They're always pushing it. I mean, basically, geoengineering is the official description of their plan to force the climate. And they're saying they need to force the climate to combat global warming, which I think pretty much anyone who looks outside their window today and remembers what the actual date is, it's the 23rd of June, and it should be summertime. But I mean, here I am in France, and it was a high today of 14 degrees Celsius. And
it's pretty chilly here.
Yeah, the level of cloud cover is frightening, actually. All our plants and all our trees, they're all showing very severe signs of stress. They've got bubbling up leaves, they've got black dots, they've got deformities, pretty much everything. I've taken photographs of all the trees. I'm very fortunate I've got a lot of trees. Well, I say over 100 plus trees, and I've got lots of different types of trees: fruit trees, figs, poplars, walnuts, chestnuts, oaks, all kinds of different trees, and cherry trees. And the cherry trees have got the fruit on them, but you look at the pictures of the leaves, and it looks like they're autumn leaves. They're all discoloured. They've got yellow tints on them. They've got black spots on them. They look like they're all just about to fall off. But you've got the cherry right next to them. You know, it's quite alarming, and this I believe is because they are manipulating the weather, and it's for a much bigger agenda, which is to control food supply and to control us, basically.
Thank you, Max, for that. Now we'll get Mona to if Mona, you can define chemtrails and maybe tell us about the difference between a chemtrail and a contrail.
Hello, Dawn.
Please.
Hi. Well, a contrail will vanish pretty much immediately after the plane, and a chemtrail will leave a long, massive white streak which will hang. It will fall. It will spread out, dissipate, and a chemtrail will contain aluminium, barium, and other toxins. They're very noticeable. When you start to watch the skies, you can tell the difference. Though I do believe that they are changing, that they're experimenting with lots of different things that they're putting in the trails at the moment. Because I've noticed some that get sprayed that almost vanish immediately until they fall quite a long way down, and then they become noticeable. So they're definitely experimenting with what they can get away with spraying, that's for sure.
Right, thank you. So let's move on now. We've defined some of the basic terms here. Let's move on to geoengineering programs. What ones are you aware of that are going on?
Well, definitely the one that's happening above my head in London that I experience in England, living in England, and it's very, very noticeable that the weather's being manipulated, that this weather is very, very unnatural, that we see, it's happening in all United Nation countries, as Max will explain. It's been happening, happening in China, it's been happening in Russia. This isn't a new thing. A lot of people think, well, this sounds like this is a new thing, but it's not. This has been happening since the mid-90s. This has been, I've noticed it the last few years in this country. That's when and you know what, it's sort of blown me away thinking this has been happening and I haven't even noticed it. Just the large manipulation of and the large scale of how it affects absolutely everything. For me, I point chemtrails or geoengineering out to people, and it's the most easiest thing for people to wake up and realise how it's all connected, how it's all part of a massive agenda, Agenda 21, depopulation, the plan to control the weather, the food. Every single part of our life is being controlled, and it's happening at such a that people are falling asleep, and people are either reliant of pharmaceutical industries, or they're reliant to get, from their work because they're paying mortgages, and to let go and to be free and to question everything is such a fattening process for most people. That's why I think with me I stick with the chemtrails, because it's a point where when you point it out to people and they see with their own eyes, and day after day after day, and then you give them a little bit of information so that they can go and do the research, and that rabbit hole will lead them to so many other places of awakening. And at the beginning it's quite a frightening process when you realise just how the whole of your life has been a lie, and that you wake up and then it's a beautiful experience, thinking that you're actually free and you're in charge of your own conscience. That is such a freeing experience. But geoengineering, it's like a sickness that surrounds the planet at the moment. That's how it feels. That it's very sick, and it's up to us to do everything we can to stand up and to raise awareness, which means critical mass, waking as many people, as many influential people up, and it is waking people up who are afraid to wake up.
Yeah. Now, you did touch on there about the poisoning, and that kind of made me think about it. I can see how that's happening, and it's not just like with the chemtrails, obviously. It's happening with the propaganda, the poison our minds. There's a lot of mind control going on, and programming with the television and whatnot, and advertisements, and even with I had somebody on about the music industry, the subliminal messages and the music videos and the all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a broad spectrum poisoning, from like the as you said about the food, the GMO stuff, poisoning our bodies, damaging our internal organs. Then we've got as you're talking about the chemtrails, we can go into the effects of them a little bit as well. I know, and obviously like their effects in our lungs, because we're breathing in the crap that they're spraying, and again, it's like the food's been affected because the soil is being poisoned by the chemtrails. So like the food that's growing in the soil is getting toxic crap in amongst it, which cannot be healthy. So yeah, I wanted to bring that up as well. But moving on, the security at the Pinnell site is said to be as severe as that of Area 51, and it's run as a military base where one lost pilot once got an armed escort immediately off the operational base. The 10-year pilot has said it was nothing like anything he had ever seen. So this begs the question, if they're not doing anything wrong, then why would they go to such lengths to protect the secrecy of this?
You're talking about Pineal Park in where Evergreen International operates from.
I should have made that clear. Pineal Park, Arizona, where the Evergreen Aviation has their base, and obviously they've basically admitted to their chemtrail or geoengineering projects.
Yeah, I believe they have contracts, and they've mentioned that on their sites before. And they've got a fleet of black helicopters there, and basically I've been looking, one of the things I started to do when I first started looking into chemtrails was trying to identify which planes they were in the sky. And fortunately, we came across something called Flight Radar 24. Now, Flight Radar 24 is a free software you can download, and anyone can use this, and you can even use it on your iPhone, so you can be out and about and see something and try to identify the plane. Now, it only identifies 75% of the planes, depending on the transponder that the planes are using. But it has some useful features, and one of the features is linked up to something called planespotters.com. And basically, I would visually spot a plane with my high-powered binoculars or with my high-powered video camera, and then I would go and check that on Flight Radar and see what it was. And occasionally, well, quite regularly actually, I would see different types of planes that I wasn't able to get a positive ID on. So obviously these are unusual, because most of the commercial carriers do use the transponders that can be identified through Flight Radar 24. So looking on plane spotters, trying to identify which there were particular planes flying around that were hot dogging it away from the normal flight corridors. And so they obviously got my attention, and they were particular types of planes. They were MC-83, McDonnell Douglas, or MD-83. And so I started looking on, basically anyway, using plane spotters, the section in Flight Radar, I started to look for the fleet of Evergreen International. And when I started to look at that, I saw that they had some of these MD-83s and DC-9s and these planes with twin engines on the fuselage. And then I started to find out that Evergreen International have owned lots of different planes, and then they change hands and go to new companies. Now, I've read somewhere that Evergreen International fit out the planes with the equipment necessary for spraying. So it's quite interesting how you can use something like Flight Radar 24, use the plane spotters connection, and then start researching the fleet history of Evergreen International to try and work out who the sprayers may well be. And then you can click on the registration of that plane and find the flight paths of that registration. And sometimes they are zigzagging all across Europe and North Africa and different locations. Even in airspace they're not supposed to be in, according to their destination origin flight paths. So it's very interesting what you can find out. Evergreen International are definitely at the heart of it.
Yeah, and funnily you should mention that. I was actually looking to see who was on the board of directors of Evergreen Aviation, and I got an interesting list, which I haven't really had time to look into the backgrounds of the names or whatever. But yeah, it's actually quite easy to come across. And the guy that actually owns Evergreen Aviation is called Delford Smith. He's the founder, chairman, chief executive officer, and member of the executive committee for it. I think it says at Delford M. Smith. But yeah, as I say, I haven't really had time to look into it, but I do plan to delve deeper and see what interesting jewels I can find about that. Now, which leads me on to Christopher Monckton. I've been trying to find, I do believe you said something to me about him being on the boards or something. I'm not sure if it was yourself. It might if you don't quote me on that, but I'm sure you can clarify. If
I did say
Monckton,
something about him. I think I got it slightly wrong, actually.
Right.
I'd been told by somebody that Christopher Monckton is quite famous for debunking the global warming theory. Mm-hmm. And he has been going on tours all around the world, giving speeches and confronting people at the UN and the IPCC and basically saying the science isn't settled. And in fact, we've been going through a cooling period, which actually I think a lot of Russian scientists have been stating openly as well, that global warming is. I think global warming is almost been accepted as a misinterpretation, and they now call it climate change. But Christopher Monckton, he's been going around really making a big effort to debunk the global warming story. And I was told that he was connected to geoengineering. So I started to look into this, and I didn't find any connections about him actually being involved with any company yet. Although I was told.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to find, and I haven't found anything yet either.
No, unfortunately I haven't found that. But what I did find is he is a chemtrail debunker.
Yes.
He's officially tried to. He's denounced chemtrails as a conspiracy theory. He has said that over his estate, people showed him pictures, not over his estate. He says on his estate he's got sophisticated air sampling equipment, and he's not found anything untoward connected with the so-called ingredients to be used for chemtrailing and geoengineering. But he has he was shown lots of pictures of chemtrails that looked incredible. They were like really severe chemtrails.
Yeah, I've seen an interview recently with him. It might be the same one. Where,
was that in New Zealand? An oldish guy was
Uncensored or something. It was called Uncensored.
Yes.
Interview.
I think
with
it's the
him.
same one.
And he was basically saying, "Oh, they're just contrails. They're just contrails," and they didn't look in like contrails.
No, it's absolutely outlandish. They were totally extreme, and they look nothing like a condensation. And clearly, he has been instructed to give the Stonewall regular answer that most politicians, because he's a politician, don't forget.
And he's also a Knight of Malta, apparently.
Yes, that's right. He is.
So there is another interesting thing to factor into it, because is it possible that he might be kind of playing straddle in the middle, or playing kind of both sides, or playing one of the sides, to try and kind of confuse people and about the issues?
I'm certain. We have to remember he's a lord. And his allegiances will not necessarily be with we the people.
Yeah,
I think it,
totally out of touch, really, with his lifestyle.
That's right.
I'm not saying all rich people are
bad.
Don't take me the wrong way here, people, or whoever's listening at the moment. However, I just don't think that he's given us a full picture. I think that he is a bit disingenuous in how he comes across. I would reserve any other further judgment at the moment, because I have not met the guy, but I'm just going by what I've seen of him in interviews and how he comes across. Out of touch with ordinary folk. So yeah, and being a Knight of Malta, I cannot help being cynical about his intent with that title. Also, right, so I want to bring Mona back into it a little as well, because I haven't really gotten for a wee while. So, Mona, I believe you had recently, and Max, you can pipe in here as well, but if we let Mona introduce it and everything, about the conference that you recently done, and can you maybe tell us how that went, how was it received, and just what happened at it? Just maybe give us a summary about it.
Okay, the second conference, we had Paul Mack over in the country. He's an activist in Australia, in Melbourne, and he set up lots of protests over there. And we've been friends on Facebook for some time now. And he inspired me to try to get gatherings together in London, watching them in New Zealand and Australia put these protests on. In the same way, Los Angeles, Conscience Beyond Chemtrails, inspired me to do something similar, well, whatever I could do in this country. Now, the second conference involved Paul being in the country and Max coming over. And just trying to pull something together as quickly as possible, and sharing information. It was a fantastic conference in the sense that there was a lot of information shared, that the audience were encouraged to give information and share information as well. We had Robert Mackenzie, who did a presentation on vaccinations and how relevant they are to Agenda 21. And how much the pharmaceutical industry make out of vaccinations. It was a very successful conference, and it would be lovely that these conferences of awareness happening all around the country in lots of different towns, villages, and halls. That's what the tour's about, really, getting the information and connecting people in the community as well, connecting people that are already awake but don't have anyone else around them to talk to or to take action with. And it was while Paul and Max were in the country together, it was wonderful. It's wonderful getting together and experiencing the energy that people have when you meet people who have already gone through that process of letting go of a lot of fear and realizing, hey, what we have to, we don't have much time to make the difference and put their hearts and their souls on the line to try to raise awareness. And when you're, in the room with so many people, like-minded people, like-spirited people, it's beautiful. We had David Lim, who's a fantastic guy who's done quite a lot of presentations. So I know he's doing some throughout the summer as well, and he has a lot of information and research on geoengineering. And Terry Norton as well, who's in Ireland, who came over and was part of our tour with us. There's so many people now that it's about just asking for help to get a conference hall available. We can do it in London, we can do it in any town, any city, not just in England but across the world. It's so easy. I'm just a single parent and I managed to pull it together from asking for help. I had no experience. I just asked for help and so many people came forward and helped. And that's what we're trying to encourage now. We're going to put on another conference soon in London. We're going to try and make it a full-day one where we're going to
Excellent.
of issues. So it's not just the chemtrails to geoengineering, but we break down Agenda 21, how it was put together, how it was sold to us, how it's relevant in everybody's life. I'm talking about the pharmaceutical industry, how it all refers to Agenda 21,
huge subjects there.
System, how it's all been filter feeding people. People are so dependent on buying their newspaper every day, picking up a free paper, they make them free on the tube and reading total nonsense, feeding them with fear and disinformation. Television as well. I don't watch television. I watch I get a lot of information from the internet now, but I was with my boyfriend the other evening and we were watching something on a television show and it broke for the ad. I think it was an old 1990s comedy we were watching. It broke, and the ads were as long as the section of the television programme, which was horrifying. It was an ad which worked on your low self-esteem. It was either a diet ad or a health ad or, hair loss ad. So it got you straight away tapping into your low self-esteem. Then the next ad was an ad for asking for money for a charity. And they'd show...
they're always... It's all the time.
Battering, and I think, no, thank you very much. I'd rather not watch and have to go through that. But the general the public, that is how we're made to feel. Our feelings and our emotions are played with and controlled until get to a point where you've had enough and you just say, I'm not doing this anymore. And it's our choice. This is a choice that we all have, which is wonderful when you realise, hey, we don't have to do this anymore. We have a choice, and it's up to us individually to take that choice.
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying there. It's totally when you see these advertisements and they've got the starving children and it's to appeal to you, to make you feel guilty and think like, okay, you have to give over this money or you're a bad person. And it's always like the celebrity or, somebody pushing it who's really wealthy themselves. But it's not really them that, you have to look higher really, because if it wasn't for the fact, I think taking responsibility for the fact that we're allowing them as well is important, but, the 1%, they are obviously, they're hoarding the wealth and they've made a system where they can actually create money out of thin air and have this fraud going on, this mass fraud, but that again, that's another rabbit hole to go into. But yeah, it does all connect, like the poison and everything, as I mentioned, and then like the monetary system, it all is tying us into debt, slavery, and then making us and it's a system of with the propaganda, with fear-based mind control, kind of poisoning to weaken our immune systems, and with the chemtrails and the GMO and everything, and it just all is like pieces of the puzzle, of a big puzzle, like military industrial complex. It's all relevant. It's all So when you talk about one thing, it can lead you off into a tangent to talk about other things, but it's all connected viciously. Now, we're
because it's we are being sprayed. You know, we get a choice. You can filter your water. You can try to eat organic food and you know, do your research of food.
Yes.
You can grow your own food. But when your sky and your air is being polluted, you have no control. And so that, for me, is why, you know, I'm so passionate about raising awareness with this.
And that's exactly why I want to have people like yourself and Max to come on and get the platform to be able to get this information out, to be able to, I mean, you're in a position where you can give people advice on how they can help, how they can get involved, because we are at Dark Side. We're all about solutions. It's not just a case of like, okay, this is happening. We also want to try and work together, collectively to try and come up with solutions or at least ways that we can work towards solutions, or how we can improve our quality of life, how we can like work together to make this place better, as cheesy as it sounds. Now, before we move on to anything else, I wanted to also bring up, because I know Max had a couple of things he wanted to cover. Now, that was the Ryanair stuff firstly, so maybe you could like bring that up.
Sure. I think earlier this week I was talking to you guys and I sent you a load of photos, and basically for the conference, because it was quite short notice and the van needs a little bit of work doing to it, I couldn't really drive over. I had to fly, so I for the first time ever in my life I flew with Ryanair. Now, I've flown hundreds of times, and I've also been a very, very lucky man. In the past, I had a girlfriend who was an air hostess before 9/11, and I was fortunate enough on many occasions to fly in the cockpit for takeoff and landing, and go in and out of the cockpit many times with the pilot, co-pilot. So I've seen the skies before 2000, basically, from the cockpit, which was pretty fortunate. So I do have an idea of what the skies look like. I did manage to get a few photos. But basically, on this particular trip with Ryanair, I was very keen to see if I could see something unusual, because I filmed Ryanair on numerous occasions flying over us, spraying. Now, I've got lots of evidence that they do spray, or at least make persistent jet trails, which, of course, we know didn't happen before. At least not at the frequency they happen now. And so we're talking chemtrails here. So I wanted to find some information. Now, I've been told by an aircraft worker from an East European country that he works at an airport, and he told me that a few years ago Ryanair started to just use the forward cargo hold of their planes, and the rear one is locked and not used. So I found that quite interesting, because I've read that planes have to be correctly balanced for flight. It's necessary. Like, you can't have two empty cargo holds. You should spread the weight. Or if you've got passengers and you haven't got many on the flight, you should spread them around. They shouldn't all just be at one end. You need to ballast. The ballast has to be correct for the flight. So something has to be in that rear cargo hold. So I was very interested to see what I could find. And where I flew from in France, the airport was a small regional airport, and you basically had to walk on the plane. There wasn't like one of these bigger airports where you go down one of the mobile tunnel things and you just end up at the back of the plane or whatever. You actually had to walk along the runway and then walk up the plane. So I had a really good close look at the plane itself, and I was able to take a picture of the engine. and I got a very good close-up of it. And it wasn't until later when I was looking at it, I realised there was a stainless steel tube or pipe just above the engine itself on part of the fuselage, and surrounding that was sort of like very shiny polished aluminium or steel, I'm not too sure, around it. Now I'd been studying the patents for the Welsbach patent and various other, there are hundreds of cloud seeding patents. The Welsbach patent is specific because that's the patent that they say they will use for geoengineering for the solar radiation management, which is spraying metal nanoparticles into the environment in order to reflect the sun back out into space without the sun's heat penetrating through and warming the earth. So that particular patent is quite interesting. So I'd been looking into this, and I found that there were corrosion issues in different documents I found about one of the methods of getting these nanoparticles into the atmosphere is by using a liquid called trimethyl aluminium. Now, this was first tested to be added to fuel back in 1958. So there's been a great deal of research and understanding on how to use this material. And then the thing is with trimethyl aluminium, when it's exposed to the air, it becomes at the right type of temperature. It needs to be at least 600 degrees centigrade. But the hot exhaust from an engine is much hotter than that. Basically, it gets catalyzed and it changes into a white smoke, if you like, and that's an aluminium oxide, which is exactly what they say they're going to be using. So when we see these great big long persistent trails, that's what they describe in the Welsbach patent, which they say they're going to use for geoengineering, which they say they have done small trials on. But we believe, looking on witnessing the great big long trails that we see that were never there before, and incidentally, they don't chemtrail continuously all the time because they can put these particles into the atmosphere and they can stay aloft because they're nanoparticles and they behave in a different way at nano levels, and they can fill the atmosphere and they can stay up there for a long time. They don't just fall straight away. Now, recently I've been looking at the skies, apart from the fact it's been very cloudy, but when there is a break, and I've noticed just recently in the last few days there are no planes spraying at the moment. Now, I have filmed a complete year round, and I have seen them spraying in every type of condition you can imagine. So the concept that it's just a contrail and they give specific reasons, or there's atmospheric conditions, it's very humid, or it has to be minus 35 degrees centigrade. Incidentally, when they first started talking about contrails back in the 60s, it had to be minus 70 degrees, and they've reduced it in half. So it's now only minus 35 degrees centigrade, and the humidity has to be quite high. Well, I filmed it all year round, and it doesn't matter what the humidity is, the chemtrails are there. And just the last few days, there are none. And there's a few times I've filmed it, and it just doesn't stand up to logic that you can have such a variance of atmospheric conditions at that altitude. You know, when you go up a mountain, it's bloody cold. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. Of course, it could be worse in winter, but when you're up that high, up 11,000 meters, that's much higher than most mountains. It's pretty consistently cold, and the humidity is there. It doesn't make sense why on one day they say, oh yeah, that great big long persistent jet trail is a contrail, when we know it's a chemtrail, and then other days those planes are flying with nothing coming out of them whatsoever, not even a little trail. It just doesn't make sense. So I wanted to find out what is there. So I basically went to the airport on the way back, having looked at my photos, and I wanted to find out, is there anything else? I wanted to find something at the airport. Now, one of the things I found was copious amounts of nitrogen gas. Now, I've been to many airports, hundreds of times, and I never noticed these nitrogen gas tanks. I noticed the oxygen on numerous occasions. Now, nitrogen apparently is used for the tyres. Now, that's because it's got bigger molecular structure, so the tyres don't go down so much and it doesn't react so much. So it's a better inert gas to have in a tyre. Obviously, when you've got a big plane with lots of people in it, you want it to be as safe as possible. Now, there's another reason that they could possibly have so much nitrogen about, because they need to pressurize the fuel tanks. Now, I've been looking into trimethyl aluminium, because that's the gas they're going to, the liquid they're going to use to form aluminium oxide for solar radiation management, which is part of geoengineering. It's a pyrophoric element, which means if it's exposed to the air or to moisture, it will ignite. So you need to store it in a tank pressurized by an inert gas, so that there will be no moisture in there and there won't be any air. So nitrogen is the perfect gas to use. So that caught my attention, because there were just bottles of this nitrogen on trolleys all over the place. There were loads of them, so it seemed to be quite excessive. So I think basically when we talked last, I made a few mistakes. I made a mistake I thought the fuel was going in the front of the nose of the aeroplane, and that was completely wrong. That was an electrical supply to make sure there's no static electricity causing an explosion. Now, I've never claimed to be an aviation expert. I've never claimed to be a scientist. I'm an ordinary bloke. I'm doing my best.
Well,
and
Max,
you're
one of the first people to admit when you get things wrong. We're only human at the end of the day, and the fact that you can admit that shows, you're a big person in that sense. You admit it, so it gives legitimacy to what you talk about, because you can. Yeah, you're a real man, as Paul says.
Well, I'm trying to get to the truth, because I think what we found out so far, it really does warrant all of our attention, all of our effort. Sorry, I'll let you carry on.
Can I just jump in? It's just to clarify to the listeners that we're going to run on a bit longer. We'll play it by ear as to how much longer. However, it might be half an hour, it might be less, or it might be, I don't know at this precise moment. But just to let you know, if you want to hang around and tune in, we're going to be here a bit longer. I've got a few questions for Mona as well, so we'll kind of jump between the two of you. So yeah, we're not going to break. We're just going to run straight on the now. While we were pausing there, I meant to ask you earlier on, both of you, if you have footage of the conference. Is there any YouTube footage of the London conference, the 2013, or I believe there is footage of the other ones on YouTube if people search for it, but is there any of the new one yet?
Hello, Dawn. Not yet. It was filmed, but we're waiting for somebody to edit for us.
Okay, that's great.
We have got the Skywatch site, www.skywatch.uk. Through them, any information or any footage we have, you should be able to get in touch with any of the sites through them. But we do have the Chugaboom Tour site as well, which is a Facebook site, where we try to keep in touch about the tour and the conferences. And but sadly, because it was put together very quickly, the last conference, because it was such an important thing to try to get Paul Mack, who was only over in the United Kingdom for a short period of time, and Max Bliss together with a few other people. These are people that have been researching and been making massive headways in raising awareness on many different levels, and getting everybody together in a room and sharing information and love as well. We forget to mention love is a massive part of this.
Oh yeah.
Which was amazing. And sadly, a couple of the people that were going to film couldn't make it on that evening.
Yeah. It happens.
Jackson, one fantastic chap who came, met up with us on the tour and did a wonderful interview of Max, which is on YouTube. He couldn't make it due to a family tragedy that happened, and another guy stepped in. Ian Simpson stepped in and
Isn't it amazing how people rally?
People come together. And can I just quickly mention before I forget that we've got a global march against geoengineering, which is happening all across the world. There's a Facebook site, Global March, I think it's against geoengineering. march against engineering. They're happening all over the planet. On the 25th of August, we've got one in London. We're going to be marching from Trafalgar Square, Nelson Column, meeting at midday, and from 2 o'clock we'll be marching to Parliament Square to raise awareness of geoengineering, because we've done a lot of protests recently. There was the Monsanto one, there was the Bilderberg protest, which was a fantastic success from what I've heard from everybody that I knew that made it there to raise awareness.
Do you have like a Facebook event or something for that, and then we could maybe just like drop it in the chat, drop it in the group, and drop it on the page, and we'll spread it around. If you have an event page or something on Facebook, then that will get more people to become aware of it, and obviously like maybe attend. Some of them will.
There will be on the London Chemtrails Geoengineering and Agenda 21 Facebook page. And that has the picture is just the London sky with lots of chemtrails. That was taken in September, the day that I told you about, when the whole sky was a grid. And that's a page where
maybe get these names off you at the end of the interview. Some of these things, and then I can just like spread it around. Just because I might not remember the name of that when I'm searching. But if I can get it off of you, I can like then spread it around the group and whatnot for people to get their attention. But yeah, if you can make it, then I mean, try it as hard as you can. MD that can make it, please, because we really need as much support as possible for to bring this, to make this. Force it into the public arena and force people to actually accept that it's going on and acknowledge that it's going on, and start to we don't need. It's like a kind of pyramid. You don't need everyone to be aware of it, to be able to be successful in doing something about it. Just like even 20% or whatever, or maybe even less. Just a few people that are determined and makes a huge difference, really does. But yeah, if you can get along to that any way possible, please do.
It is really important, actually, because one of the things that the government and the people behind this have managed successfully to do is to stifle attention from focusing in on geoengineering, really. And people have got to realise that what this is about is spraying toxins and chemicals into the environment, into the air we breathe, and onto the ground and into the water. And basically, there are massive correlations with the exponential increases in illnesses associated with this. You've got autism, you've got Alzheimer's, you've got multiple sclerosis, you've got Parkinson's, you've got asthma increases, you've got allergies. When I was growing up, many people didn't even have allergies of any type, let alone hay fever. Now, everybody's got something or other, and these are all related to chemtrails. So this is important. The other important thing about chemtrails to realise is
vaccines.
They've been doing this for a while, and there is a tipping point. You can't just keep spraying toxins into the environment without there eventually reaching a tipping point. Now, the biotech companies like Monsanto, DuPont, and I can't name them all. There's about 10 of them.
Is it Syngenta?
That's right.
Bayer.
Bayer, yeah, they're big. They're old school one. Yeah. Basically, they've already started to prepare for this tipping point. They're aware of what will happen. So what they've done is they've developed very extensive aluminium resistant seed lines. Now you can go online, anyone can verify this. They've got aluminium resistant trees, every crop, every plant you can think of. They've already got GMO resistant seed lines. Now they're prepared for it, so they know that there's a tipping point coming. Now, I would suggest that people start researching this and verifying it for themselves, because don't take our word for it. We're just amateurs. We're just doing what we can. I mean, ultimately, we want people to find out this information for themselves so that they really come to terms with it. And we can certainly help by joining a few dots and maybe helping people find the information more quickly. But the tipping point is important from the point of view of the toxins in our environment and in our blood. We've had lots of rainwater analysis done all around the world. I'll give you an example of what the normal amount of aluminium in the air should be: 0.008 micrograms per litre. The normal, the amount in southwest London, where Mona lives, they did a rainwater analysis there. Rainwater being useful because it gets into the rain at a point of nucleation in the precipitation process in the upper atmosphere. Their rainwater analysis came back 740 micrograms per litre. That's massively over the normal amount being 0.008 micrograms. So this is highly toxic. Just 5 micrograms of aluminium breathed into the lungs will start to damage the cellular activity in the alveoli of the lungs. Just 5 micrograms. And they're spraying they're finding 740 micrograms in the rain. So this is extremely serious. This is real. This can be quantified and verified. So we need to be aware of this. There are other elements to this as well. For example, one of the things about global warming they try to frighten everyone with is the ice shelf loss. Now,
global warming, can you define it first before we go into it?
Global warming, what they're trying to say is, due to the anthropogenic activities of man, the industrial activities, our activities on this planet, whether it's power stations, whether it's industry, whether it's just our normal putting the lights on in a house, and there's billions of us all turning on the lights, is warming up the planet. It's what they try to say. And our activities have caused the weather to change and the ice shelves to diminish, and basically for sea levels supposedly to rise, and for the pump system from the warm waters of the Atlantic going up to the ice shelf that create a pump system that keep the weather system acting normal. They're trying to say that's all being affected by our industrial activity. One thing I'd like to say about them blaming us as us, we the people, we're not in charge of industrial activities. We don't make power stations, even though many of us know we could be using alternative systems for energy that are clean, safe, and abundant and free to everybody. Now that would be HHO. We can break down seawater using electrolysis like we did at school on demand and use the hydrogen from that to power a normal generator, which the byproduct is water. And we can do that in our cars. We can run cars, petrol and diesel, from this. And this is quite well known. There was a man called Stan Meyer back in the 80s that did this, and he had lots of media attention, and now that poor fella's been killed in a mysterious accident.
Mysterious and very
so there's one example, but the thing is, with global warming, what they're trying to say is the ice caps are melting, and if we don't do anything, low-lying areas are all going to get flooded, there's going to be catastrophes, everything else. Now, sea level has not risen one bit for a start. That's measured, and that's propaganda, that's not true. The ice shelves have changed, but so has the position of the North Pole. The North Pole has been moving dramatically. Now, I believe, I don't know this for a fact, but I believe from the research that I have read indicating that they can use HAARP to reposition the Earth's magnetic pole. They can move it. Now, I know from research that they definitely have been trying to force global warming since the mid-19th century. This is how far back the desire to force global warming through industrial means, because they wanted to get the seaways through the North Pole, because America, for the world trade, America is like a big obstacle with just the Panama Canal in the middle, and you have to go all the way round down the bottom there. So it's very limiting. So that for a long time they wanted to be able to get through the Arctic, the polar region. So also there are great resources trapped underneath the ice that they would like to access. Now, I know this for a fact because when I was searching, there's a great deal of activity in the Arctic Circle, and there are ionospheric heaters in Russia, in Norway, in Sweden, in the UK, and in Alaska, and it's all around the north, the polar region. There are ionospheric heaters in other locations like Japan, Australia, Puerto Rico, and various other places around the planet. But the polar region is quite important. Now, in Finland, in one of their universities, I came across an advert for a researcher, a PhD researcher, to develop through sustainable development the concept of being able to build different settlements in the polar region. Now, this is a 4-year post because they are planning to build settlements in the polar region so that they can access the resources which are currently not available because they're under ice. So they already know in the future that ice won't be there, and they're planning how to set up development to whole cities. They're planning.
It's not surprising, is it? It's not.
And basically, they're already planning military sovereign rights. You've got John Kerry working on it at the moment. They're working out who's going to be in charge of this, that, and whatever, and they're going to divide it all up. So they already know that they're going to melt it. Now, one of the dangers about melting the ice shelf up there is there's lots of trapped methane gas. Now, there's a man called Dane Wigington who has become a forerunner in exposing geoengineering, and he's got a website called geoengineeringwatch.org. And he was one of the men that was a part of 2 documentaries called What in the World Are They Spraying and Why in the World Are They Spraying? Mm-hmm. And he's got a scientific background in climate science. So he's certainly an authority to be able to speak about these things. Now, he claims that there is a huge quantities of methane being released into the atmosphere at the polar regions. And what it will do is speed up global warming. It will speed up breaking down the ice, but it will also have dramatic effects on the climate. Now, I also have come across the fact that what they can do with these ionospheric heaters, so I'm talking about HARP here, which is the High Active Aurora Research Program based in Galkona in Alaska. There's also the IceCat one in Norway. There's one in Russia, in Surrey. There's one in the UK, in Carmarthen. There's also a massive one in Yorkshire. Basically, these are radar stations with totally movable antennas, and they send up huge amounts of energy into the atmosphere. They bounce it off the ionosphere, force multiply the energy because the ionosphere is a protective shield of energy. That's really powerful. And they can tap into that and they can direct it to where they want. Now, one of the things they can say in response to the methane problem is to triangulate the beams from different ionospheric heaters and create a particle beam, which is very powerful, and it can they can direct this particle beam at the pockets of methane that's escaping and change it. They can change the molecular structure of the methane. Huh? So already we're seeing strategies being developed where they can legitimize the use of these weapons. HARP is a weapon. It's been, they are weapons of mass destruction, more powerful than nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Disturbing.
Especially when they triangulate them and make them more powerful. And this has been documented about them as a weapon, just from the European Union alone. Back in 1995 and 1999, when they were writing extensively to the US military to give them details about the use of HAARP as a non-lethal weapon, and they talked about tectonic weaponry, where they openly stated that it can be used for creating earthquakes, it can be used for creating tsunamis, it can be used to trigger volcanoes, it can be used for climate control. This is all written by the EU government. You know,
could it not also be used for to affect your brainwaves, like mind control and whatnot?
I can tell you something about that. Earlier on today, I mean, I've read about ELF waves and our brains work at extremely low frequencies. This type of technology to use for mind control has been pioneered since the 1930s. It has been extensively researched in Russia and in Britain and in Israel, in America, and that they are very advanced with this. Even during the 70s, Henry Kissinger allowed the staff of the Moscow embassy to be experimented on. And a lot of them contracted diseases because of the experiment, and it was to do with microwave technology, which is what we're talking about here. This is what HAARP is. It is microwave technology at different frequencies, extremely low frequencies, and it can affect your brain. And it can, if you stimulate one particular part of the brain, it can affect an emotional response. So one of the things that they were doing was, for example, in Russia, they were experimenting with something we called the woodpecker, which is a huge antenna array, which is based in Chernobyl. And during the Cold War, they were basically sending this radio wave right over North Europe and America, and you could hear it on shortwave radio going like the woodpecker. And basically, the idea was that they wanted to disrupt the social behavior of people, of the population, as part of the Cold War synopsis. You know, this is how we might do war in the future. We don't have to have a war blowing people up all the time. There's lots of different methods. From afar,
it's kind of like almost like, especially with the drones as well, it's kind of like a computer game. It's like they're trying to train people to accept, oh, we're far enough away from it, we don't see what's going on, they don't see the results, so they don't feel, like.
Yeah, and got blood dripping down their face.
They're distanced from it, but it's like they're screwing with people's minds, and
it's an incredible thing, Dawn. They can create a riot. They can zap an area like London, like they had a couple of years ago. They had a riot there, didn't they? It's very possible that they could have been using not just HAARP, they could even use the mobile phone masts. The mobile phone masts can be used for this, and probably the new 4G network is probably very much something to do with this. There's definitely something to do with the weather control as well.
Max, I wanted to go back. I know we're kind of focused on HAARP now, but I wanted to go back and kind of focus on, cover, the fact that you went to this Banbury Road in Oxford, 64 Banbury Road, Oxford, where you say the regulation for geoengineering is decided or going on.
But
tell us about what happens when you visited there, who you met, what you experienced there.
Sure. Basically, when we were in London for the conference, Mona, myself, and Olga Raffa. Olga lives down towards the Cotswolds, and I'd been trying to contact the various geoengineering lecturers that basically there's been a course set up in at Oxford University, at Martin College, Oxford University. And this was set up in 2010. This was following the 147-page document from the British government, from the Science and Technology Committee, the report for the regulation of geoengineering. This was an extensive report that in the opening pages, it talks about the UK government having to push the agenda of geoengineering on the international scale. But the UN would be the framework for which the regulatory body would be established. So basically, from that point, they've set up this geoengineering course at Oxford University, obviously to try and find a way to get this publicly accepted, because it's important to realise we pay for this, and we also have the power to stop this. And in the government's also set up something called the Solar Radiation Government Initiative and Management Government Initiative. And basically, in this is a lobby group to lobby foreign nations and to set up conferences in Latin America and Africa and all around the world to get different governments from different nations to accept geoengineering as a feasible policy because of the trans-border issues of spraying these heavy metal toxins into the environment. You have to have everyone's agreement. So they've set this up. So I knew this organisation, this course, has been set up in Oxford. So I suggested, why don't we go down there and try and find them? Because I've been trying to email them and they never respond to any of my emails. And I've sent many, many emails off to all the different people. There's about 15 people who are lecturers on the course. And I've since found out that they have a lot of students. This is a full-time course. So basically what they're doing is they're training up a wave of publicity people that will go and try and make this acceptable to the public. And I've even come across some of their courses, some of their topics are like how to present an unsettled science to the public to get them to accept it, although that's not the exact name of it, but basically that's the essence. So I really want to talk to these people, and they would not return any of my emails, couldn't create any dialogue, so we decided let's go along there and let's try and find them. So we went to Oxford, and Mona and Olga and myself, and we went on a merry tour of Oxford trying to find out where the actual place is, because where the course was being run was actually being refurbished. So when we found the actual building where they were supposed to be, it was all gutted out and it was a building site. So basically, fortunately, Oxford, I don't know if anyone else has been there before, any listeners know about it, but basically Oxford is just really a very old town. Filled with lots of interesting architecture and buildings, but pretty much all the buildings in the old town are different campuses of the university, different colleges linked to the university town. So the whole town is basically lots and lots and lots of different buildings which are different campuses. So it's quite confusing. You can't just turn up and say, right, I'll find it. You have to sort of get directions and troll around the streets, and hopefully you'll get it. But so anyway, to cut a long story short, we ended up after a few misdirections being told to go to 64 Banbury Road, which is a little bit out of town. It was in one of the older buildings, and when we got there, the building itself didn't have any reference outside to geoengineering. But we'd walked a long way, and we thought, well, we better check it out and let's see. And we had a look around the building. It's basically like a big house, really, but it wasn't a house. It was a purpose-made building, but like a red brick building. And there were some people coming out, and we asked one guy, and he said, oh, no, there's nothing to do with geoengineering here. And we thought, oh, that's a bit disappointing. Maybe we've got it wrong. But there was a guy inside, and somebody else came out of the building, and we were fortunate enough to sort of walk in. And we went inside, and we talked to the guy, and we were asking about geoengineering. And I don't think he really got the understanding that we were just like people from the street. We're just members of the public. I think he had the feeling that maybe we were something to do with the geoengineering course. I had some paper from the geoengineering course, which I was using to try and identify the people we were trying to find. So possibly, I didn't mislead him or anything, but quite possibly he might have thought that we were to do with the course in some way. So it was interesting because he said, "Oh yeah, there's a lady at the top of the stairs. Go to the right to the very top, and you'll find her." He told us her name, and she was to do with the geoengineering. Go up there, go and help yourself. Just go up there. So we went upstairs, and we found her fairly quickly, and we were able to talk to her, and it was very revealing, very interesting. And I'll tell you what. At this point, I'll let Mona carry on, if that's all right. Mona?
That's fine. Yeah, jump in, Mona.
Right. We found the woman upstairs, and we started to ask questions. I recorded it actually, Max, didn't I? Do you have the recording? Is it? Are you possible to play the recording?
Yes. Good, Mona. Paul, are you around?
Certainly am. Recording coming right up.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell me who you are, or? My name's Max Bliss. Yeah. And I'm investigating geoengineering. Because many people are quite concerned about the health impacts of that environmental impacts. So, we should go to people who are studying that. I think it's controversial. Yeah, I know. I'm aware of that. Yeah. So, what we want to do is create a bit of dialogue, understand how the programme's running, to what extent the programme's going, and we'd like to share our concerns, because we represent a lot of people, so that there can be a dialogue created. So I think it's a public concern, and we only understand information we can glean from the internet, mostly, and we try to find facts that seem verifiable and build up a picture. So we've been studying this, and we know that the regulations for geoengineering at the advanced stage, which means that it's almost like they're giving it the green light, and it even be that maybe they're already doing it. And so we're quite concerned because we know that aluminium and barium and strontium are very toxic. The mine trees are dying, and I'm very unhappy with that. And of course, I've had rainwater analysis done, which show excessively high amounts in aluminium, barium and strontium, which you have to wonder why is it in the rain at such levels. And the information is pointing towards that's part.
So at the moment, because we know project soon, there's no one from the project in the building, and I'm just the administrator, so there's not much I can do for you at the moment. But if you leave some contact details, you can pass it on to...
It's quite a list of you, isn't it? It's quite a list of people. Are these lectures?
We are not the Oxford Geoengineering Program.
Okay, but you're a different geoengineering program.
This is the Institute for Science, Innovation and Society. We're running a program in climate geoengineering governance. And then the director of the institute is part of that program, but we're not running it here.
We've got the other Indian Institute, which is, we've been there and it's been totally renovated.
The Oxford Martin School is based usually at the Old Indian Institute, but then at the moment they are based in another place because they're refurbishing the building. So if you give me like a Google address, I can pass it on to the people involved in the program and ask them to get in contact with you.
Do you have many people coming in who have concerns about geoengineering?
Yeah,
I can see are you concerned about climate change being a hoax that's been completely manipulated over the years deliberately, so that going back to the early 60s, President Kennedy talked about weather control 1961 at the address of the United Nations.
If you write your email address,
we're interested in dialogue. We don't want to create trouble except for people who could be experimenting against the Nuremberg Code. They cannot experiment on a population without their consent.
Okay, are you still there, Max?
Yeah, I got it, yeah.
Fantastic, and that's where it cut out. That's it.
we got so deep into everything that forgot about the recording. So yeah.
Yeah, it was unfortunate that the recording stopped short there. Yeah. We are amateurs. we're not professionals, but later, as we were talking to the girl, she noticed that I had a video camera in my pocket and the light was flashing on it, and she was like, "Oh, you're not recording this, are you? You're not recording." And she was very concerned, and I actually felt a little bit sorry for her because she was completely taken by surprise, really. However, she certainly confirmed for me that she was working with the governance side of it, and it is an advanced stage, and I think it's very likely that they're going to try and go public with it and try and push this forward so that it's accepted and it's openly declared that they're doing this, which I think is extremely dangerous because I don't think people are very well informed. And there's a lot of deception going on here.
Especially with the language they're using as well.
It's
and the
very
legal
deceptive.
Documentation, all this legalese.
Yeah.
Jargon.
It shouldn't even be allowed, really.
Mm-hmm.
Not when they're dealing with us, normal people, everyday people. But I did talk to the girl as I was leaving, and I said to her, this is such an important issue. Things are happening around the world, plants are suffering and everything else. And I said, it's really important that people are informed. People are worth it. And the poor girl, her eyes were welling up with tears. She knew that there's something serious going on. And we went outside, and I kind of felt like we didn't quite achieve everything we wanted to. But luckily, Olga had a copy of the directive, which she's been working on along with Alex Longman. And it's quite a comprehensive document that basically raises all the concerns about geoengineering and the dangers about geoengineering, written in a format which is to be handed to all the politicians so that they cannot get away with ignorance and claim they didn't understand what was going on. So we had a copy of this, and we went back in there, and outside, she inside, we could see her and the receptionist guy downstairs. She was having a right go at him. Obviously, she was taken off guard by us being allowed to go up.
Moves us towards solutions kind of thing, or like working towards any suggestions. Maybe we could get Mona to come in here and let her have her say on that, and then you could pipe in after her.
Yeah, sure.
Solutions. I think just what we did, Max, in Oxford. That's a solution. It's confronting, fearlessly confronting. And letting people know that we are awake and we're not going to let this go. Also, getting involved, solutions. Talking to everybody about real things, about what's really happening, trying to raise awareness about this subject in however you can. I mean, if you can, get a gathering of people together, why in the world are they spraying? What in the world are they spraying? Max has got hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos that of information. There are many people like Max that just spend all of donate their time and their love to raising awareness. What Paul Mac is doing in Australia as well. They've got the flight track system where across Australia they track the flights. They know what flight's going over, who's spraying, who's not spraying. They're documenting it. There are lots of groups that are happening now all over the world, not just that spread out across the England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, but all over Europe as well, the States, Canada, where not just through Facebook, but people are actually meeting up and connecting in person to look for solutions. And there are solutions. We're at a point now where we are the solution. I'm sure you've heard before, we are the change. Once we become consciously aware, for me personally, I can only talk about my experiences, but when you know that something is wrong and you have the ability to make a difference, no matter how big or small that might be, even if it means getting a few friends together, and showing them why in the world are they spraying, and then having a conversation afterwards about it, and then going further on, doing the research into the film. You find out about Scott Stevens, find out about Dane Wigington, and then you get more and more information. Connect with Facebook groups, with websites, and do your own research. And, you know, as you mentioned, Dawn, it's all connected. Everything is connected. It's Agenda 21, depopulation, everything is connected. And so the solution for me personally is, while I'm alive, while I'm consciously aware, while I'm in a position where I've got where I'm connected to a lot of people, I always put on conferences, arrange tours, try to help other people set up groups. Since the first conference, loads of people have got in touch and asked, I'm going to put a conference on. You know, I'm in North Wales, or I'm up in Yorkshire. I'm going to set up a group. It's so easy. If you live in an area, just set up a Facebook page while we still can, because the internet's going to change very, very quickly, very soon. So while we still have some freedoms, let's use them. It's like the protesting as well. Protesting is going to change soon. I remember in the 90s when we protested against the criminal justice bill, and then we protested against the wars, and we did the Reclaim the Streets. So many people gathered on the streets and protested. Now, recently, with the protests against the NHS being sold off, so few people, it was just the very ill and vulnerable and directly affected that were there protesting, which was quite heartbreaking. I think it's just getting people up and to stand up while we still can, while we still have this, while we're still coherent enough and we are capable, do whatever we can, no matter how little it may seem, it makes a difference. So that is, for me personally, that is solution. And speaking out about it, anybody who knows me in my community knows me as the activist or the chemtrail lady, because I will speak to everybody that I meet about geoengineering, chemtrails, vaccinations, how corrupt the education system is. I have real conversations, and I don't talk about the consumerism buzz of what I've bought and what I've watched, and so forth. It's just so important that we let go of all that social programming and we connect on that level that we all connect with, that spiritual, deep level. We as human beings are amazing, amazing spirits. That it has been, we come into the world and we are capable of so much. And then as we're nurtured through that nurturing process and the social programming and all of the insecurities and fears that are deliberately put upon us to make us feel separate and different and isolated, we let go of all of that, and we go through that process, and we realise that the solution is letting go of everything and then connecting with everybody around us and letting go of all resentments that we have, and we connect from a really deep, loving, spiritual place, and we realise that, we are all the same, regardless of all these horrible isms and race, gender. When we go in and have to sign forms to tick boxes, that's deliberately there to make us feel separate and sort of isolate us from the person next to us. And the reality is we're all exactly the same. And the solution is we all get together, we all open up. All of us have the answers within us. From my experience, as Max said, I'm just a single parent. I'm 4 years in recovery for addiction. I'm totally abstinent. That was something that crippled me for years. But when I became awake and aware, I went through a massive spiritual... I was terrified for years. I was so frightened of everything. And when I learnt to face all my fears, I went through a massive process of realising we all work out of love or fear. And it's a choice we have. And I think from that process of letting go of it doesn't matter what other people think of you. It doesn't matter, if you own a house or you're homeless on the street. We're all the same. And for me, the solution is when we let go of all of that programming and we realise it doesn't matter what you've done in your past. What matters is here and now, and what, that consciousness and what we do with that consciousness. I've just been told to be quiet by my daughter. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. That's such a fantastic, long and deep answer, and it's really, it just shows the level of your knowledge on the subject and the deep research you've done into it is very apparent. And that's, I couldn't have asked for a better answer to my question there. So yeah, thanks a lot. Max, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, that's pretty difficult, actually. That was very well done. I think ultimately, one of the things that we all come to terms with is regaining our power. We have to realise we've given it away, and we didn't give it away consciously. It was sort of taken away from us through a system that's been designed to control us. And once you start to realise you can break down the barriers, you become free, and then basically you just do everything you possibly can to change the paradigm. That's what it is. We have to change the whole system, and we have to do that from grassroots, which is what we are. We're grassroots people, just ordinary everyday people, and we are the people that will make the change. And if we can make this effort, everyone can make this effort, because we're just ordinary regular people, but we've just made that decision. We've come to that realisation, and we're doing all we can. And I think part of it also is perhaps it's a spiritual thing. And what is happening in the world is actually pretty evil. These programs are real, and they're devastating, and they really are basically quite evil. And I think people have to dig deep and fight all their demons inside and make a decision what they're going to do. And if you ignore everything that's happening now, then you're basically giving up. And I know that's not easy for people, because there's a lot to come to terms with. But I think that now, more than any other time in history, is the time to be brave and be brave with yourself and be honest with yourself. Iron out all those demons that we all have had or have, and then be able to move on for the greater good rather than just ourselves. It's much more important that we all work together as collectively as people on this planet together. And that's where I think the spiritual essence comes from, because we all really are brothers and sisters, and we must recognise that, get rid of all the isms and the social devices that have been used for divide and rule, because this is how complex the system is. It's been set up to stop us all uniting and challenging the status quo, from removing those people who have all that power and they don't use it wisely. They use it for destruction, they use it for control, they use it for profit, and they don't care about us. We have to take that power away from them and redistribute that fairly and evenly amongst all of us, so everyone can benefit. That 1%, they're corrupt. They're so far removed from reality. I would say that they really are lost. For them to be able to take out these horrendous programs, that's where I feel it's a spiritual war, and we all need to wake up and unite together and be the change we want to see. We have to be that change. We have to make that commitment. And it starts to become easier. It's difficult to start with, but it does get easier and easier and easier as the facts come in and the picture becomes clearer and you understand the real situation. It's almost like you're taken away on a tidal wave. You're surfing right on the edge of a tsunami of information and change. And I think the more you embrace it and you understand it, the more obvious it is what you need to do, and you will find what you need to do. It will come your way. And I think that's what happens. Everyone has to make the decision to change the system.
Collectively, our individual responsibility and our collective responsibility. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So just want to wind things down now. Basically, if you can both give us, we'll start with Mona, your final words, anything else you want to add to get out there just before we close out the show?
Hello, Dawn. Yeah.
Hi.
Before, I guess I'd like to take the opportunity now to mention this is something that we have not done alone. With the first conference and all of the tour that we've done so far, the gathering, we all work together. There are so many people I could mention that very, put their hearts forward, that have donated their time, their energy. They've travelled up to London. I put fundraisers on, and they've just given their time to either come and play music, donate their art. There's just so many people, I wouldn't have enough time to thank them all, that through asking for help, so many people step forward. And all of it's that, being humble and saying, please, can you help? And anybody out there listening who just thinks, it doesn't just have to be about geoengineering, but if there's something that you can do to make a difference, that truth, to raise awareness, to help. I see all these people in the world that are so wealthy. I see people that they get, the more money they get, the disconnected they get from each other. And I think that us, how we work, I have nothing. And I'm in a position that I'm very grateful. I have a roof over my head. My child is secure. I don't need more than that. I have food in the fridge. That's all that I go on in the day. Everything else goes into raising awareness, putting on the conferences, and that's my priority. Not getting I'm blessed that in my life I've already travelled, and I've done a lot of things with my life. I spent many years partying. I was a traveller for a long time, and so I've had lots of life experiences. So my time now is about raising awareness and giving something back. For many years I took, and it was a point where I had to realise that it's time to give. We do lots of things in our lives and we think, oh my goodness me, I knew from a young age that there would be a point in my life where I'd have to struggle, and I'd have to go through a process of waking up. Because for many years I was asleep and I was a hedonist. And then it got to a point in my life where I had to say, okay, I have to take responsibility for my own consciousness and my actions. And that's the process I'm going through now. I'm doing everything I can while I'm alive to try to make a difference. Not just for me. It's not just about me. It's about every living thing on this planet. And it's something that we can all do. Anybody out there who's listening, it doesn't have to be a massive gesture. It just means, just getting a conference together. If you know a couple of people that can come and speak and do a presentation in your village, in your town, in your city, just set up a Facebook page. Get a hall.
Even these small steps, relatively what seem like small steps, can make all the difference. Can bring a huge number of people towards them.
Connecting people as well. And if you do it just once, ask for help as well. If you just get the idea, get a couple of people behind you, lots of other people will step forward and help. And then you get a group of people together, and out of that group come other groups. People go away with that information. It's like a butterfly effect. And then they go back to where, and that's how awareness is spread, just from little ripples. And the films, as Max mentioned, why in the world are they spraying? What in the world are they spraying? Chemtrails Project UK, the Facebook page, Skywatch, fascinating with Jesuits and Niall in Portsmouth. They've got an amazing website. And if you're financially viable, why don't you set up your own website of awareness and spread news? And talk to your friends and your loved ones. Have real conversations. When you hear people speaking about gossiping about people, try to use your energy and your love to turn it into something constructive and positive and real. And I'd just like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I apologise, I'm a bit of a waffler. I gallop off into the sunset, or the supermoon, which is non-existent because the sky is so geoengineered in London. It's like living under a blanket, and it's heartbreaking. I want to feel this moon, and it wouldn't surprise me if something happens in the world where we'll have, what happened 2 years ago in Japan after the supermoon, where we'll have some kind of false flag that's blamed on the moon. No doubtedly, that's my imagination, I'm sure. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity. And
my pleasure. Thanks for coming on at such short notice, joining Max. Max, do you have any final words before we close out?
Well, I think one of the things I would warn people who are new to these types of issues is that you will find that some people are very uncomfortable when you share this information with them, and you will get people ignoring you or taking the mickey or even having confrontation, get quite heated sometimes. But at the end of the day, that's their problem, really. But there are so many different issues to resonate with. It could be fracking, it could be EMF radiation, it could be the banking fractional system and the austerity measures, it could be illegal wars, it could be 9/11, it could be 7/7, it could be any of the false flag events, it could be vaccines, GMOs, chemtrails, HARP, depleted uranium, the fact there have been over 2,000 plus nuclear explosions in our environment, putting loads of nuclear radiation into our environment. There's so many different things, but one of the things that we should do when you resonate with them is research them as much as you feel comfortable with, so that you're in a position, when you're armed with verifiable facts, when you've learnt a little bit about it, you can talk comfortably with people about it. It's a process. It takes time, and you'll go through lots of emotions. You'll go through a grieving process. When you start to understand that our government's a little bit more, not much more than a management team for the obscenely rich elites that are controlling this world. All they are is a management team to control us, not for we the people, for them. And they've got dark agendas and they're working towards. So the only way we can expose this is by understanding it, I think. If you really understand it, then you'll do whatever you can to share this information, because it's only by reaching critical mass that we can change this. And I think that we're on the way. We've been having such positive feedback from so many people on our tour and at the conferences. And surprisingly, when we went down to Stroud, it's like everyone in the town already knew what we were there for. Not what we were there for, what we were talking about. So many people are waking up. So we shouldn't be afraid to talk about these big subjects. They've devised ways for us to stop talking about it. They said, you shouldn't talk about politics and religions at parties or dinner parties. It's very boring, so they've conditioned us not to talk about stuff. And we've got to get over that, really. We've got to dare to share this information. We've got to be innovative and do everything we can, because every little thing does make a difference. And I think that's the main thing. When you make the commitment, you'll find a way, and you'll be surprised how many people you can connect with that have been through the same experience you're going through and can lend you support, can give you inspiration. There's lots of help out there if you ask for it, as Mona said, and she's completely right. And it's basically a case of being committed in whichever way feels right with you. It doesn't matter how big, how small. Just by doing something, by being aware of it, could just be talking to somebody at a bus stop, just pointing out a chemtrail in the sky and saying, I've heard they can control the weather, whatever. Sow a seed in someone's mind. It doesn't really matter. Just please, everyone should do something. And I think when you're armed with the facts, or at least some of the facts, it's enough to get other people to start looking at it as well. So that's where I'll leave it.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, both of you, for joining me on the show tonight. It's been really good to have you both on. We've covered a lot of really important information subjects. We didn't really get much. At least we touched on HARP, but we didn't really kind of get much into the subject of HARP. So I guess we can leave that for a future show. Because it is such a huge subject, this, with the global warming and it's like several rabbit holes all rolled into one. But one thing, actually, I've just realised we've got another 5 minutes, so maybe we could tackle a couple of, maybe one more or two more questions just before we close the show out. Just to we might as well just do the hour, because we're nearly there anyway. So, could you tell us a bit about the 3D radar system in relation to HARP and its purpose?
Yeah, you're talking about the new 3D IceCat installation in Norway and in Sweden. Basically, the EU have just funded an upgrade to the radar station, there's a radar station in Norway it's an ionospheric heater, but basically what this system can do is it can do more what they call experiments more rapidly. It can multitask. It can actually virtually do hundreds simultaneously, whereas in the past they can do them in milliseconds. In the past they would be using their equipment. Basically, it's a field of antennas that can be directed in any direction, and basically it sends energy, microwave energy at different frequencies to different locations in the atmosphere to interact with particles to change the weather. They call it experimentation, but I think most of us that look into this realise that the weather is actually under control now. You only actually, this year particularly, is quite a good one to demonstrate that it's actually being controlled, because we can see that in the UK they've already talked about the fact that the wheat harvest is going to be down 30%. They've already said in advance it will be down 30%. They've had an emergency meeting at the Met Office at in Exeter, the HQ, where MPs and climate scientists have been there. Basically, the 3D ice cap system means that the 14 million that the EU have paid for it, and apparently they're going to upgrade it even more, means that they can control the weather more effectively. And there are different installations all around Europe doing this, but that's a powerful one. That basically means when I look up at the sky and I film as regularly as I do, which is many times a day, I will quite often come across frequency signatures in the sky, new types of cloud formations. Now, I will see, sometimes I'll see chemtrails, sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll see altocumulus clouds, which are like little bun-like structures in the atmosphere. And what you get at when the atmosphere is heated, and that means it's vibrated, and that is from these systems like the IceCap 3D system. So that basically what they're doing is they're heating up that part of the atmosphere so that they can change the air pressure. And I've filmed this many, many times where you'll see these frequency lines occur afterwards. Usually that's a precursor. And then you'll see these parallel lines that are almost like ripples in sand. When you see ripples of sand, that's because it's repeatedly been mechanically hit with water. That's energy flowing over it all the time. Well, it's the same in the sky. And I will film this, and you'll see these clear, defined parallel lines, which are quite incredible to see, but they only usually last about 10 minutes. And then the pulse of energy is gone, and then the reaction from the vibration of those particles will mean that it starts fuzzing over, and you'll start seeing a huge cloud formation changing. Sorry, we're running out of time. Sorry.
Sorry to cut your rant off there. No, I shouldn't say rant. I mean your very valid points that you're making.
This happens all the time.
But yeah, I had to cut you short there.
Can I just say that if people want to see that, I've captured it several times, and I've posted it to my YouTube channel, which is Mr. Max Bliss. So people can go and have a look.
Try and compile all the links together from the show from both of you after. And thanks everyone for listening. And thanks Mona and Max for joining me. It's been a very productive show. Until next week, over and out.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.